Welcome to the Mentors Office podcast. Hugo Morales has over 15 years of experience. He currently serves as delivery director at Wizeline, where he leads multidisciplinary teams to deliver innovative software solutions across various industries, including finance and media. Previously, he was the head of IT, faculty, and technical project manager at Tecnológico de Monterrey, demonstrating his strong leadership and project management skills in the tech sector. Hugo holds a master's degree in information system management and a bachelor's in computer science from Tecnológico de Monterrey. Welcome, Hugo. A pleasure to have you here.
Hello, Alvaro. Thank you for the space. I'm very happy to do this, and very nice to meet you as well.
Hugo, well, I'm very pleased. I think this is an episode that can help many people interested in the technology sector and growing in there, and also for the wise liners. And to start this conversation, I wanted to understand a little bit better your role and what it is about. Can you tell us what are the responsibilities of a delivery director and what is it
Sure.
like in a day-to-day basis?
Sure. A delivery director is a very special role here at Wyzen and even outside in the industry because it is a jack of all trades. It provides us a mesh between our stakeholders, our clients, or the business that we are building together as a services company, and the engineering teams and the other multidisciplinary teams that we have at Wizeline as a way to serve as a joint to provide value to our customers. So specifically role-wise, a delivery director serves as a very multifaceted task-based role where in some days you would be having conversation with stakeholders about what's important for them, what's value. On other days, you will be working with engineering teams to understand how can they actually increase the value they are building, how can they grow their careers, how can they strengthen their technical skills. And on other days, for example, we would be managing internal operations. What about the finances in the organization? How are we managing the staff, the onboardings, all of the different tasks? It's a very dynamic role in the sense that there's not a specific agenda on a day-to-day basis. It's more about addressing what's important at any specific time for everyone that's connected into an account: engineers, stakeholders, clients, executives, VPs. And this mesh serves as a point of information for all of them at the same time.
Very interesting. And would you say that this is the next step in maybe in an engineering career? If you're trying to grow, maybe you become an engineering manager. Could it be a next step to become a delivery director, or like whose career path should lead there?
So, delivery directors primarily serves as a stepping stone for project and program managers because of the scope they manage. Usually, project managers would be focused on one, two, or three projects. Then a program manager will be managing one or several accounts. Then a delivery director would manage a high number of accounts or a high volume of engineering talent within a specific set of accounts. However, there are cases where the engineering path starts shifting more towards management and less towards coding. And
Right.
that's when a delivery director can serve as a stepping stone for engineering. And it provides a lot of value because as an engineer, you understand a solution that needs to be addressed. As a delivery director with an engineering background, you can very much pinpoint and be very highly technical into very much understanding how all of the stakeholder systems and interfaces are connected and how to actually build them and how to build a property for that because of your engineering and technical background. So it can serve as a stepping stone as well.
Very interesting. I want to continue to further understand your role, and what advice would you give for someone that is starting out in a role similar to yours?
And that's a very interesting question. Um, usually, when you are working in as a project manager or as an engineer or at any other technical role within an account, you're very focused on a specific part of a solution. You're focused on your next Jira ticket or how your sprint shapes or what's the roadmap for the next 2 to 3 months, but it's still very transactional. you're still thinking about what needs to be fixed right now or what's the solution that you need to build in a short to medium term. As you start growing into your career and how to actually start building yourself to step towards a leadership and managerial role as a delivery director, you need to start shifting your mindset less about the short-term solution and more about the systems that can scale, or about the processes and about the products that can serve as connectors for larger teams, for larger ecosystems, for larger organizations, and even how organizations connect with each other. A delivery director is about shifting that mindset towards value and toward what's important to the stakeholders. There's also an additional aspect where if you compare the engineering career path versus a delivery career path, for example, where an engineering career path is very focused on technical skills and how to use the technical skills to solve a problem. A delivery career path or a delivery role is more focused about the whole environment and how the whole environment brings revenue, brings value, brings additional extra added context, or anything else that shapes more into the strategy oriented part of a conversation. So when you're stepping into a delivery role, or when you're trying to move into a delivery role, you need to think in the bigger picture always. It's all about what makes sense for the stakeholders and what makes their companies resonate and grow.
And what skills do you consider essential for someone that is becoming a delivery director?
Well, the first one is context switching. As I mentioned, as this is a role that provides as a mesh, you need to be very flexible, very mentally flexible to be able to work in operational tasks on day one, and then on strategic tasks on day two and three, and then think about the next quarterly business review or executive business review that you have in 6 months, and start working towards that. So be able to switch rapidly of context and thinking about the shorter term solution for one stakeholder, and then think about the longer term solution for the VP or executives. It's a very important skill. The second one, I strongly believe in empathy. Since ultimately you are managing talent, empathy helps you understand what are the resonators of engineering quality and engineering talent, and be able to help them move into the next level, because a delivery director is only as successful as the engineers that he is managing throughout the accounts. So if you're actively helping them grow into their careers, grow into more strategic roles, grow their technical skills, and grow their leadership skills, then you help them grow within their organizations, and then that helps the organization grow as a whole, and you being able to help them steer their learning tracks and careers towards that.
And how do you
It's a
do
very
that?
valuable skill.
How does that look in the day to day? Like, how do you help people grow their technical skills or their professional career?
It's about mentorship, to be honest. Technically wise, we may not be providing that much of a value. That's where you have technical leads and you have other roles that provide
Mhm,
stronger career paths for technical skills.
mhm.
But when you're talking about how to actually provide value and mentorship, we delivery directors, for example, are strong advocates of the consulting mindset. So being very actively identifying which are the most talented engineers, help them move fast towards consulting mindset, helping them understand how to actually provide better value, or how to actually look at the bigger picture of the stakeholders, and that active mentorship, it's really important. I currently serve as mentor for several of our engineers that day one we saw them, we knew that these guys were special. So we're actively mentoring to help them grow. And for the rest of the folks, we're also on the lookout. We're staying close to them. We have constant conversations. One of the key aspects here is that we have everyone in the office. For example, here the account that I manage right now, so it's also about walking around, speaking to them, and having little snippets of what they are doing right now and how you can actually help them push to the next level by small contributions, very key contributions at any specific time. So then, and rephrasing, you have like the strong mentorship actions and the smaller tasks about giving small advice to help them all grow.
And I don't know if maybe you can give us a little bit more of an example of how mentorship looks like. How do you do it to How do you think that a good mentor, or what a good mentor does in your case?
Sure. Well, first of all, a good mentor needs to understand what the teams are building. I can put an example that just happened yesterday to make it more clear. Um, we have an engineer that identified a problem to be solved with a stakeholder.
Mm.
So we have several layers of mentorship to help that reach into a proper state. The first one is helping that engineer understand how to actually take their idea to the next level. Okay, you have identified this. Okay, let me help you rephrase the idea so it's more about the value we can provide and less about the problem that you have right now. So helping them shift that mindset. Once we start working with him to be able to express the idea in a state that is on a consultative approach, then the second layer of mentorship is all about, you know what, come with me. You are going to be presenting your idea. I'm going to be there with you. I'm going to be supporting you. And in any case a conversation goes to any direction that we may not want to go, I'll be there to help you, but at the same time I'm going to be providing you feedback. So on the first part, it's about helping them change the mindset, and on the second one, it's about enhancing their presentation skills, enhancing their consultative approach to be able to actually send the message in a proper way. And then once that happens, if the meeting has a good result, and this is actually an area of opportunity that we can explore together, then it's about mentoring that specific engineer, and that's what we have been doing in this past couple days, mentoring that engineer to actually shape that idea into something that's work items, right? What do you need? Do you need additional team? Do you need time? Do you need to understand better the problem? Is help them move into the right direction. And then once the idea is solidified and this is a new business that we can have, then it's all about, okay, what do you want to do now? Do you want to lead this team? Do you want to mentor this team and help them with that specific role that they're interested in growing, into making sure that they are doing it in a proper way, because they all have different skill sets. If you want to be part of the team, it's all about technical expertise. Okay, so how can we help in a technical expertise? If you can actually coach the team and guide them because you have any other responsibilities that you have to take care of, okay, how do you actually coach a team or mentor a team to move there? So it's all about that, being together with the engineers that are moving towards a consultative approach path, and helping them in different steps of the way with different advice and different ideas and different feedback for them to be able to continue growing their experience.
Okay, to summarize, you mentioned context switching, mentorship, empathy, consulting mindset. Do you have any advice maybe on books or podcasts or a way on how to learn more about that? Or how did
Yes.
you do it?
Yes, I actually have three books here that I love because these are the books that have helped me shape my career. The first one is this one. It's the Challenger Sale.
Okay.
This is a book that speaks about the recession in the US and how, when there were times of the recession, around 90% of all the people that had sales based roles, they started failing. They were not able to sell because nobody was willing to buy. But that other 10%, they were a different kind of breed of salesman. They were more partners. They were allies of their prospects. So these people actually started selling more because instead of trying to blindly sell something, they were helping their clients understand their problems and how to actually grow together.
That
So
is
this,
more like consulting mindset, right?
yeah, it's about consulting mindset. It's about taking a different approach and understanding the problem in the dimension of value and in the dimension of growth, and not about selling for the sake of selling. So
I
this is a
agree.
book.
I agree. Understanding sales and having a good sales mindset can help anyone, and it can
Yeah,
help you in your personal relationships. If you're a software engineer, if you do sales, if you are the CEO, whatever, sales is, I think, in the core of everything and in the core of a consulting mindset, definitely.
I think everyone should know how to sell because we are constantly selling. We are selling our work. We are selling ourselves. We are selling our company and our
Exactly.
reputation.
Even
We
to our
always,
families, when you try to, you know, transmit something, you are selling something to them.
yeah,
Or
selling.
even if you are dating, you're selling yourself. Or if you're looking for a job, it's not really that you're looking for a job, it's you're selling yourself, you're selling your services. So it's, I think it's on you use sales on a every day.
And a delivery director is always selling, but it's selling value.
Exactly.
It's helping them understand the next step into our clients and sell the idea that we can all grow together to that. So that's the first book. The second one is this one. It's Conscious Business. This is a book that speaks
Oh,
about
Fred
building.
Kaufman, he's great.
Yeah, yeah. This is a book that speaks, and Sheryl Sandberg supported the book as well. Um, this is a book about understanding how to build companies with a proper framework of values, and it speaks a lot about empathy, which is one of my favorite topics. And it speaks about how when you build a company and when you build a team in the forefront of values that you want to share together, then the internal motivators of the people resonate with those values, and it provides an additional level of increasing performance because you're removing the transactional value of a relationship, and you're moving more about an inspirational role where people aspire to be there, and where people aspire because they are sharing the same values and they are sharing the same resonating mechanisms that help them into their career and into their wellness. So this is the second book, Conscious Business. Very, very strongly recommended. And this one is a new one for me. This one I read it like 3 years ago, and it helped me when I first started stepping into the delivery director role. This was recommended
Awesome.
by my former boss at that time. It's called The First 90 Days. The First 90 Days is a great book because it's about breaking all of the prior preconceptions of what happens when you change of role, when you change of job, or etc., when you're changing something. And it's about helping understand from a scientific um, foundation. This is all about science foundation. How if and that the phrase that I love about this book, that is the one that resonated the most to me, is that you would be making a mistake if you think that repeating what made you successful in your past step in your career is going to help you be successful in your next step in your career, because it's about stepping into a different role and understanding first. And this book talks about how when you're joining something new, a new client, a new company, a new job, a new role, a new anything, the first mistake that you could do is to actually go ahead and try to pitch all of your ideas, because you don't know the culture yet. You don't know how they behave. You don't know the story behind the decision that they have been making. So if you try to pitch your approach without understanding the context, then there's this concept that this book manages, that it's about the white cells of the organization. They're gonna be rejecting you. Like if you were a disease that's trying to join, and then you have the company rejecting you back through their white
Right.
cells. This book talks about not doing that and actually taking an approach where you start influencing from inside, and then you start pitching your ideas once you have gathered rapport and influence and recognition. Then that's when you can start doing that, but not at the start.
Very interesting. And I definitely think that you being aware of what to do when you start in a role, and that's the title, the first 90 days, is definitely very important. Like asking like what did successful people did in the past when they start, or what should you ask when you start in a new role, what should you do, what should be your mentality, your goals, how success look like. Definitely a very important thing. And now I want to talk a little bit more about your experience and to learn more about your success, and also of some of the lessons that you have learned in this role. Could you talk about a successful program that you have led, and what were the key factors that contributed to that success?
Sure. I keep very close to my heart one of the very first roles that I had as an account lead or as a delivery director, which was for an online marketplace, an online delivery marketplace. Um, this was an account that started very small. It started with less than 15 engineers,
Mhm.
but it had a lot of reputation, specifically within Colombia, Argentina, Mexico, and Brazil actually. And we started very small, which having an account with 10, 15 engineers, you would be considered like a smaller fish still, because there's not that enough volume to be able to actually change things inside. It was very transactional. It started as being 15 or even a little bit less than that, engineers working on very specific tasks. So what we started doing once we were starting to work with them, the first thing that we did was actually to understand what they were trying to build and what they were trying to accomplish, and and even what were their competitors. So we started researching about them. We started researching what were their public records, what were their the news about them, what were their growth plans. And once we started understanding what's the direction that they were taking, then we started doing research internally of who were the key players leading those initiatives. And then we started to meet them. Some of them we would ask for introductions from prior stakeholders that we were working. Actually, some others even were called messages. Hey, you know what? We're working with Wizeline. We are here. We're here to help. How can we help? And by doing that repeatedly, we started growing really fast, but not only in volume, but also on relevance. We started growing that account from 15 engineers. We wrapped up around 75
Wow.
in the span of a year. But also, we started getting involved into the most critical initiatives. At the start, as any relationship when you're a services company, you usually start with the smaller projects. So by the value that engineers were providing and the report and how we were communicating what we were building, other folks started taking notice and they started inviting us to higher priority, higher criticality projects. And we reached a point where one of their key initiatives for very specific restaurant domains was actually completely led by Wizeline. We had a specific part of engineers working, reporting directly to the VP, and the ownership of that project was completely on us. We were able to move into that direction because of all of these aspects that we told. It's about communicating, providing value, sharing with the proper folks, getting to know people, getting to know others, and and helping the engineers actually deliver consultative value instead of transactional value.
I think that's very interesting. I also find it challenging because sometimes on some teams, of for some clients, like those teams don't have or don't measure the value that they create within the organization. It's more like they're more focused on something more operative or engineering wise, but they don't really have like a way to measure their value. And I think that that can be that's for me that has been sometimes challenging on how to sell value to a team that doesn't measure value. What do you think about that?
This is a super interesting topic because we see it all the time. Um, in an ideal state, in an utopia, you would be joining a team that has everything already set. You know, you join a team and they have their priorities very well mapped, and they have the stories and tickets and work to be done very well documented. They have even their acceptance criteria or how to actually represent if that ticket was coded successfully, very well written, and you have the metrics behind that. You know, you have how fast the team is going, what's the average work that an engineer can do, what's the metrics. That's the utopia. I don't think that I have seen that happen once in a very solid team that we joined, because as a services company, we usually join teams that are more in the step of a necessity more than in a step of a maturity. So usually what we do as a delivery directors, actually that's part of my role, is by understanding what all of the teams are doing, part of what we need to do as well and how they are providing value is also understand what are the step of their maturity process that they are working on right now, and either help them change or influence change for them to be able to move forwards a proper state of maturity. And I have two examples of that. The first one is a team that is very hermetic. It's a team that is very jealous of their own team composition and their own team effort. So they were not willing to listen for external support. what we started doing on that team is actually helping the engineers pitch the ideas from the inside. So instead of us proposing how to actually have a proper setup of a whatever project or a Fajira project and how to actually start measuring, we trained and mentored the engineers to do that. And it's all about slow process. It's like a slow cooking. You start small. You start, okay, you know what? Maybe this month we're gonna start estimating the work to be done, and then there's little rejection, and then it starts getting adopted. Okay, we start measuring the smaller things. Okay, now let's take a look of how you plan the next 2 weeks. Then we started helping them proper planning. Okay, now let's take a look at how you actually manage the backlog. That's the next step, and it starts evolving. It's a long effort because it's like the I mentioned in the book, the first 90 days. If you join day one and you tell your stakeholders everything is wrong, you're doing it wrong, you're not measuring anything, you're gonna get a lot of rejection. So it's like a virus trying to change things a step at a time, growing internally. So that's one. That's a great one, and I really think that that's the best approach because then the ideas come from the team, and then you help the teams position themselves better within their own stakeholders because they are finding value in the team that they have.
Right.
It's not about Hugo or others being external influencers to the team. It's about actually the team evolving together to their own ideas. Now, that's when you have specific teams that you can help. But if you need to take more of an organizational approach, other thing that we do is skip all of those operational layers and work directly with the people that are more invested in having proper metric systems. In this case, for example, other delivery in the stakeholders' accounts or VPs or executive stakeholders, and then we do assessments. We do a very strong work of research. We map all of the teams. We map where's the maturity process in all of the teams, and then we go into our VPs and executive stakeholders with a broader idea of how to evolve this as a program. And we share what they are doing well and what they could improve and why we think that these improvements make sense. And then with that executive sponsorship, what we do then is we add folks that are very very knowledgeable in that. For example, project managers that have safe certifications or PMP certifications actually serve as agile coaches and provide a framework that it's top down. So it's different approach, right? The first one is bottom up, and the second one is top down, where we provide that bigger framework, and then we start measuring how teams are adopting the bigger framework. So it's the approach depends on what we find when we start getting into a stakeholders organization and how they build software.
Okay, so the two or the key factors that I understood, one was the well, having a consulting mindset and also trying to look for opportunities, sell to different important, identifying key stakeholders and reaching out to them. The other one was about what you talked about in the book of the first 90 days, that trying not to to sell everything at first, but learning about like starting slow and seeing how can you start selling your initiatives without creating any resistance, right?
Yeah, and it's a win-win. Ultimately, if Wiseline is able to grow, it's because our stakeholders are growing as well. And one of the phrases that we mention very much, very constantly when you have a delivery role is that one of your goals is to actually have your stakeholders get promotions. So
Okay.
by helping them grow in their careers, we are helping ourselves as well. So that's where the empathy then comes back, right? Understanding what are their motivators, what actually makes value for their own companies and their positions, and how they can actually position themselves better and help them and give them the tools to position them better. And that may spill some of that value into our own growth.
Very interesting. I think that's a very good advice. And now we talked about a successful case. Could you tell us, or could you share a story about a program that didn't go as expected? And what
Oh
did you
yeah,
learn about that?
that was the one that I learned the most. So unfortunately, and this is a reality in any services company, how we think in this case, for example, Wizeline, which is a very value oriented company, for us to be able to be a proper fit with stakeholders and clients, we need to find clients that think very much alike. And sometimes we may think that we find them, and once we are inside, we see that it's a whole different story. And we had this very important telecom company here in Mexico where everything started looking very good at the start. But as we started building more rapport with the stakeholders, we started seeing parts of their culture that were very much not aligned to how we actually build software and how we actually learn. And I can put an example of this difference, right? In broader terms, there's two types of software strategies. It's the optimistic and the pessimistic. The optimistic software development strategy, it's about thinking about how you can build the next feature and trusting the teams that they're going to do the right things. This works, for example, very a lot of California-based startups are actually very optimistic. US-based clients are usually very optimistic on a majority. On LATAM, we have found that culturally they are more shifting towards the pessimistic end. They try to protect themselves. They have more closed knit contracts that don't allow us that much of wiggle room to actually promote new ideas. So what would happen with this client is that the two approaches clashed. Wizeline is very culturally aligned to work with optimistic companies, and we faced a pessimistic company, and we were not prepared for that because how we were building software was more on the basis of providing immediate value instead of protecting ourselves and protecting everyone. So these stakeholders were expecting us to have everything very well documented, even for them to cover themselves. And we were not that way. So when and they would take advantage of that since it was not properly documented because we were thinking about how to help them get into the next level fast. They would start taking leverage of that and they would start creeping our scope. And since there were no documentation that was backing them up was supposed to be built at the start, it's they started adding more work, more work, more work, more work, and they would not be willing to pay more or have more engineers. So the project started extending, and we started moving into a phase where we were actually losing revenue because it was way too much work that they started to sneak into the statement of works without us being able to control that because we had not the proper mechanisms, even in our contracts, to be able to protect ourselves from that. And a project that was supposed to last 3 months lasted more than nine because of all the scope creep that we had internally. And that was a great learning experience. It helped us learn, first of all, that you need to read better your stakeholders and understand what's going to protect all of us, them and ourselves, when things go wrong. Because when things go wrong and people enter into a survival state, they behave very differently than when they are in this honeymoon state where we are all friends and we're all family and we're all working together. The second one, it actually helped us um, build better contracts that were more tightly knit to be able to protect ourselves from scope creep and from everything that happened. And I have a great story about that. When you speak about scope creep, you usually see things like, oh, they were two stories and then they added a third one or a fourth one, right? When you go into the extreme levels, which is the thing that happened to us, um, we were in the fourth phase of reviews. This is a design project. We were in the fourth phase of reviews about things that we needed to change. We had no limitation of how many times they could get back to us with changes. So this was infinitely continuing. We had a conversation with them and we told them, you know what, this is the last time that we can allow because this is getting unsustainable. This is the last time that you are able to provide feedback. Provide all of your feedback by Friday, and we'll address them all at the same time and then be done with the project. A week passed, went by. Friday came, we had no news from them. We thought that we were in a good state. 11:55, on a Friday night, literally. They send us the feedback document,
Wow.
600 pages of changes. They piled us so much work, and we were not able to control that this project went haywire. We needed to get more people. This was all in a warranty period. Like, this is a project that really helped me learn to always look for how to protect everyone and not allow for others to take advantage of the goodwill and good intentions of the people working in it.
Wow. And how do you think that you can do like what could have done could have done better in that case?
So the first thing is is to actually listen to the silent speakers. Um, this is a company that it's this is a telco company. Telco companies in all of the world, they don't have the best reputation because of the practices that they have inside. They're very good ones, but most of them come from very old-fashioned ways of thinking. So my first advice is to actually listen to the people that have worked with them before. We did hear some advice and some warning signs. Some of the folks said, you know what, we should be careful. These guys are not as friends as you think they are. You need to be very careful of what we're doing. So at the start, we kind of ignore that because sometimes companies are driven more towards, oh, this may be new revenue, let's explore. And we believe that we can control it, but we ignored some of those early advice. The second one is to actually make sure that even in the sense of good faith and goodwill, your contracts need to always be prepared for the worst. So have a very close look at the languages of your contracts and make sure that there's no way where you can be taken advantage of. Having that SOW or work order or contract be reviewed by several folks of different ways of thinking, be reviewed by some people that are shift towards the pessimistic end, others towards the optimistic end, and try to do very closed scope contracts or closed approach or closed goals contract helps a lot. And the third one, it's also about knowing when to back from a bad deal. Um, even though that we saw at the start that this project may get complex, since this was a very large company with a lot of influence in that country, um, we thought that the end goal of growing with them would surpass the bad days that we will be having with that specific project. So the proper choice in that moment would have been to back out. When we saw that things were going the wrong way, we should have backed out and said, you know what? We need to cut this relationship. This is not working for both of us. Let's move into another things. But instead of that, we kept that blind faith that things would get better, and it went into the ultimate worst. And what ended up happening, anyways, is that we ended up cutting relationship because it was not a proper cultural fit for us.
Right. Very interesting. Yeah. If you see that it's not going to work or you see any problems, maybe it's better to finish up faster. Right.
Yeah, yeah. Wrap it up early or even get into an agreement where this may not provide the results that we are both expecting and find a way to cut the losses.
Perfect. Now I want to talk about another topic that is very important related to consulting mindset and is about articulating value. How do you articulate opportunities or value to businesses, to business customers? What advice would you give to an engineer or to another person in your role?
Sure. So, my first advice, I have several. My first advice is that before you try to communicate value in a consultative approach, you need to understand very well the business that you are working with. Many times when we join projects, we are very eager to mention what are the things that they are not doing well. And this is like I mentioned, the first 90 days. But sometimes there are teams that are new to the industry. In a very topic sense, if you have a real estate business, you have real estate experts. Not always it happens that way, and most times it's all about a learning experience. So real estate, for example, or media and finance, or marketplaces, or delivery super apps, it's all about understanding and doing proper research first before actually getting into that conversation. Because what would happen is that if you don't arrive well prepared, you may be ignoring industry specific challenges or industry specific aspects that could work against what you're trying to build. And a very specific example of this is within the finance and banking industries. Banking companies are all regulated by a series of finance rules that they need to respect no matter what, because it's all about um, like world level compliance mechanisms of how to actually manage finances. If you're working in a, let's say, this is a very dumb example, but it can help the purpose. You're working in a banking project that is working with transactions, and you think that there's a way to make transactions faster by ignoring the triple or quadruple acknowledgement that that process can do, because that process takes time, right? And you go into your stakeholders and say, you know what, if we remove half of the acknowledgements but we change this other process, then we can be faster. And you go there super eager with your research about how this can improve from 2 seconds to have a second response time, and you get into that conversation very very well prepared in that specific topic. And then your stakeholder with the first phrase asks you, were you able to read on the banking policies that all of the companies have to be able to do transactions? At that moment, if you say, I didn't, that conversation is moot. So it's dead in the water because you did not do your proper research. So that's the first one. The second one, it's about rehearsing. There's a very different language, the one that you use to share your ideas into the inside, to how they should be shared into the outside to your stakeholders. Because ultimately, and empathy based recommendation, uh, stakeholders, the people that are working in companies that are working with us, some of them, if not most of them, they are putting their life's effort and their years effort into what they are building, and it's a product of love. So if you don't rehearse, you could slip very easily into mentioning this value-based consulting mindset with the with the improper language, and then you can start hitting onto that folks' ego instead of thinking about the what needs to be built. And putting an example as the first one that I mentioned, right? If you go into a stakeholder and you say what you're building is wrong, even if it was wrong, your choice of language is gonna change how that person reacts to it. Because if you're saying that your work's effort that you have been investing 3 years of your time building this is wrong, you're gonna put that stakeholder into a defensive state. And then that stakeholder will work around protecting why their idea is not wrong, and not actually um, a very nutrient rich conversation about why we can work together into improve the direction of how things are being built. So it's all about language and choosing your words wisely as well.
And what advice do you have for someone that is in a low level position, let's say, that doesn't have a lot of power, maybe a software engineer that has an idea? How can that person try to sell value or articulate opportunities to a to a big business or something?
If if you ask um, executives or VPs or delivery directors, people that have done that for a long time, the first thing that you will hear is that they were all shadows before actually taking leadership in these calls. So, my advice to low level engineers or people that are barely starting in their careers into a consultative approach is to actually stay close to the people that have done that before and learn from them, because it's it's a very delicate um, there's very very small details that may not be important, but the people that have done that for years know how to manage that. And for example, an engineer that has not been doing consulting before may not know how to read a room properly and how to actually identify when a conversation is not gonna get into what we wanna get or not. So when you stay close to others and you stay in their meeting rooms and you listen to how they talk and how to express themselves and how they manage conversations, you start identifying how people that have done this for a long time need to have very flexible minds and very agile minds to be able to steer the conversation back into where they want them to be, if it's going right or if it's going wrong, or if they need to cut their losses as well. One of the conversations that I had a couple weeks back, we had our assumptions wrong because we did not have the full information, because they were internal initiatives that they were building that we were not aware of, and there was no way that we would be aware of them. It was very easy for us the moment that we identified that this was not going into the direction that we wanted, because they already have other plans in there. It's about cutting the conversation. Even if it's a 1 hour meeting, if you're on minute 5 and you see that this is not going to go where you want them to go and there's no way that it's salvageable, it's about saying, you know what, this meeting was not needed because definitely you're already solving your problem. If you need any help, let us know, and that's it. Those
I
types of
agree.
things within that room, it's something that only experience brings. There's no book that can prepare you for that.
I agree. And also, sometimes you are not the one that maybe know how to do that or know how who to reach. So I think that also a good idea is, if maybe you are in a low level position or something, like try to find the people or the sponsor that can actually help you sell that. And in my case, that has helped. Like, I look for someone else that can help me sell these initiatives or see how can these be sold, because I'm not sure who to contact or how to do it or how does it work internally inside the company. And now I want to go to another important part of this episode that is more related to career. And I wanted to ask you, what was the biggest challenge that you have faced in your career, and how did you overcome that difficulty?
Okay. The biggest challenge that I have faced is to actually grow a thick skin. This is a continuous challenge, but when I changed my role, or when I shifted my role from a project based role and as a project manager towards a delivery manager and then a delivery director, one of the first cultural clashes in how I work on my own skills, it's that I started getting to know people that were harsher with how they communicate and with what's good or wrong. I may say that even as a project manager, you constantly from your stakeholders receive sugar coated information, because it's not the proper person to actually unfilter yourselves. As I started growing into my career, getting into more conversations with VPs or executives, the first cultural clash is that these guys don't hold back their punches. And being on those meetings where you think that everything is fine and dandy and everyone has been already sugarcoating everything before you step into the, the bigger table, and then they start wailing at you with all they have, and you start just taking the punches, learning from that and growing a thicker skin and understanding that that's a new part of your role and adapting to that. It was one of my strongest challenges, because it goes very much against what I built myself as a personality initially, right? When I speak about empathy and growing a business through values, and then you go into the other table and the other room when looks like that takes a less priority and it's more about reality and metrics and revenue and stuff like that, and they're not holding back anything, being able to extract the message from the emotion, it's really hard at the start. So my biggest challenge has actually been able to understand how to split emotion from business and actually work on a business oriented sense, and then internally protecting my own emotions for them not to actually be released in the meeting. Because what it can happen is that if you let your emotions take over, then you start you can have a very visceral reaction in that meeting, and then your lack of experience shows, because then you add emotion and passion and visceral reactions into that meeting, and it goes the wrong way. So it's all about holding back, taking the punches, answering back in the same sense, and protecting your own ego from outcomes of meetings. That's definitely one of the biggest challenges that I have been facing, as I continue growing into my roles.
Very interesting. And can you share your top three rules of success?
Yes, the
Could
first
be in
one.
your life or your career. It doesn't have to be specific.
Yeah, the first one. Always manage expectations. It's about setting the rules of the game and setting the rules of the room and setting the rules of the meeting. You can do it with an agenda if you want, but most of the times it's all about constant communication. As you continue getting into higher visibility roles, you start understanding that things will go well and things will go wrong all of the time. But how you actually manage expectations around that um, creates a response of either support or not on how you do it. For example, right now that we are struggling to find some technical leadership in one of my accounts, it's very different if we would have waited 8 weeks without saying our stakeholders anything, and then we get into them and tell them, you know what, we have not found the guy. It's very different, that response, than if we are constantly communicating since the start. You know what, you're asking for a role that needs to be Python based but also has iOS experience and DevOps, and it's like, you know what, sir, this may not be as easy to find. We'll keep you updated, but you're asking for something very challenging to find in the market available as talent with all of those combination skills. So as we manage expectations, conversations get easier because everyone is on board to solve the problem instead of being blindsided by a surprise that they were not expecting. So that's the first one. Always manage expectations. The second one is to always work with the values and passion that you have in your day-to-day life. Even though that we are here to work, obviously, and this is a job, and this is something that is more of a economical transaction than anything else, you're working with people and people values and people beliefs and people's culture. So if you work with a framework of how to help each other be happier in your jobs and in your roles and in your growth and in your life, then you will tackle conversations differently. Because yes, it's about the business, but it's about how you embody the message that helps that business grow or not. And when you start working with empathy and values above anything else, and they are genuine, people respond to that. And then what starts happening is that you start building relationships based on trust, not based on that transaction. And on relationships based on trust, you start hearing and understanding the actual challenges that people have, instead of the external shell based challenges that people would communicate if they had no trust. So always bring your value into your work, always. And the third one, that's actually one of my other principles, and I have this with all of my direct reports and all of the people. It's radical honesty. If things are going well, say that things are going well and congratulate the people. But if things are going wrong, say that they are wrong and ask for help. It's always better to expose yourself and communicate what's happening with honesty than to actually try to hide the issues behind the drawer and hope they fix themselves, or anything else, because what would happen is that they can grow into an uncontrollable state. And then since you didn't manage expectation, and then you were not honest, then the impact is twofold, because it grabs everyone by surprise, and you lose you lose trustworthiness. You're not a trustworthy person. So sometimes it's a little bit hard. Being honest, it's not easy for everyone. For myself, at least, it's more about being in there in the good days and in the bad days, and working together and being honest with everyone, so that we can all be empathetic about the problem. So those are my three core things, like radical honesty, um, empathy and bring your values into work, and management of expectations, and set the rules of the game since the start.
Perfect. And that last one was very interesting. What would you think or say for people that don't like to hear bad news? Because in my experience, it has happened that people that or managers that don't like bad news or something, like radical honesty can be difficult. How can you communicate tough things with people that don't like that?
So I can put an example on that, and this is how I drive my own way of thinking, right? Let's say that we're working together, Alvaro, and you, you may not have been the best at very specific tasks in your day. If I am not honest and I don't mention that openly, then there's that risk that you could believe that you're doing a right job, but you're not actually doing that good of a job, right? If that happens, then pretty much I'm lying to you, because I'm not telling you what's happening. And then what would happen is that as you start moving into your career, there may be a point in time where honesty would have helped you grow more than actually blindly believing that you're doing a good job. So sometimes I do see sometimes, and I actually had this conversation very recently when one of my managers, I received extremely good feedback in my last feedback reviews. And I told him, you know what? Thank you for the feedback, but I'm not perfect. I want to know what I'm not doing right, because I learn more from my mistakes than from my good things, right?
I agree.
So if I don't get bad feedback, or if I don't get honest feedback of what
Or
I'm not doing,
or let's not say bad feedback, but like opportunities to improve.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
think that
right.
also it needs to be actionable, because in one experience that I had, I saw a manager that was not completely satisfied with some of the things that I was doing, but never told me how to improve or what was the expectations. So it's like, okay, yeah, this person is um, telling me, or by their, let's say, yeah, attitude or physical expression or body language, I could feel that, but that person could not articulate, what needed to be changed to improve the situation, or what was the expected result. So I think that maybe that's another key. If you try to be honest about something that can be improved, like if you want something, if you think that someone can improve something, you need to provide like that, a specific unmeasurable thing on how to improve, right? Because if not, it's just, you can say, okay, I don't like your work, but yeah, I don't like your work, and how like how good work looks like. Otherwise, you are like running in circles, or completely blind on how to improve.
So the way I see it, and this is how I drive myself, is that honesty is an act of love. It's about caring for others and helping others grow, more than helping them get an ego boost. So if I love the people, I love my work and I love working with the people that I am here. If I love them, the least that I could do is being honest with them and telling them the harsh truth sometimes, because that love will help them grow more than if I did not do that. So that's how I drive myself and my actions.
And to finish this, and to wrap up this episode, because we don't have any more time, Hugo, can you like quickly tell us what is the most valuable career advice that you have received or that you have?
Yes, There's one that I really like, and I do believe that this is the one that have helped me grow into my career recently really fast. It's about make sure that you're doing work of value and make sure that it's visible. Very often, what would happen is that people would be doing really important stuff, but nobody would notice. So then, like, growth and recognition go very much hand in hand with who is actually seeing the changes.
I agree.
So
Like
right now,
knowing how to sell, if you create value, how to communicate that to your managers, to other people in the company, and to the leaders, I think.
yeah, definitely. That exposure is going to help you a lot grow into your career, because it's not about doing quality work. It's about making sure that others are seeing quality work that you are doing as well.
I agree. And I think that the best way to do that is try to interact one way or another with leaders. Try to reach out or to send them something, or if you have I don't know, Slack, try to share there the content, or but somehow you need to get to know or get an excuse to know the leadership. And well, Hugo, now we don't have any more time, and I want to thank you for your time. It was a very insightful conversation, and I hope that everyone here uh, takes advantage of these key lessons. Thank you very much.
Likewise, Alvaro, thank you so much for the time and space, and hope this helps anyone that is looking to grow into a delivery role. Have some tips and tricks that I have learned throughout the years, and if it helps anyone, I'm very happy. And if anyone else needs to reach out, also very happy to give other advice in any other means.
Perfect. Thank you to everyone, and see you in the next episode.
Thank you.